Do you ever wonder what happened to the people you worked with at one of your first jobs? The people you stocked shelves with, closed the store with, swept the floors with, the people who had absolutely no idea where life would take them? Well, neither did you. Today's guest is someone I've known for decades. Mike Connolly and I worked together as teenagers at Sport Mart. We were just a couple of kids trying to make a few dollars. And then fast forward all these years later, and Mike is leading one of the most respected waterworks businesses in British Columbia. And I'm helping organizations develop their leaders. Neither of us could have predicted this, but that's what makes leadership journeys so fascinating, because every leader has a story. Welcome back to Lead Between the Lines, the podcast where every leader has a story. I'm your host, Steve Coleman. And Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I'm really excited. This is my first time on a podcast. And like you say, I've known you for years, so I'm extremely excited to be a guest.
Yeah, excited to have you here. First of all, we've known each other for what, over 30 years?
I believe I was 16 years old.
Yeah. Well, we worked together, as I said, at Sport Mart back when we were teenagers. Neither of us knew what our careers would become. I certainly didn't think I'd end up spending my life helping organizations to develop their leaders. Did you ever imagine that you'd end up leading a successful branch in the municipal infrastructure business?
Definitely not at the time. It's just different paths in my life brought me to where I am now, and it definitely wasn't something that I grew up thinking I would do.
Yeah, well, okay, let's go to Sport Mart. Let's start there. Tell everyone about Sport Mart. What was your job and what do you remember most?
I started out at Sport Mart as more of a fuel to feed my hobbies. I was into bike racing, road cycling at a fairly high level, and snowboarding. And I wanted an avenue to be able to send me to more races and put me on more mountains. So I started working part-time as a ski and bike technician at Sport Mart, starting when I was about 16, and brought me through my high school days. I didn't realize at the time that I would later come back to Sport Mart, and I ended up being a general manager of a couple of their locations and learning some of my first leadership experiences.
So thinking back, who are some of your managers that you remember, and what lessons from that first job still stick with you today?
Absolutely. The big standout was our owner at the time. We were a smaller privately owned company when we worked there. And the owner, Kevin, he put a lot into the company culture and made it a very fun place to work and kept people around for a long, long time. To this day, I try to mirror that company culture with my team.
Yeah, that's great. And looking back, aside from Kevin, were there other leaders there who influenced you?
Absolutely. Yourself being one of them. We were junior at the time, for sure. Your brother was there. And they taught that work can be a fun place to be, and everybody has a piece of the contribution to offer. And it made me stick around for a lot longer than I ever thought I would.
Yeah, it's funny how life plays out that way sometimes. Looking back, is there anybody that maybe taught you exactly what not to do?
Absolutely. I think in that stage of your life, you are young and people are new to those roles. And I got experienced many different leaders throughout that. I worked at a number of locations, and you definitely see mistakes be made, which I think is a good thing. Everybody needs to make those mistakes to grow and learn.
Yeah, and it's funny when we're teenagers, we don't realize we're already watching leadership happen. We're watching managers, we're watching owners, we're watching customers, co-workers, and some of those experiences just stay with us forever. Now, when you left Sport Mart, did you know what career you wanted?
I really didn't at the time. I think my dream at the time was to get into automotive. I always had a passion for cars. that obviously didn't happen. Construction's always been a big piece of my life. My grandpa owned a civil contracting company. My dad managed one. My uncle was a civil engineer. It's always been in the blood. Um, when I was done with Sport Mart, I always took the summers to work in construction as a laborer. And when I finished high school, I actually went into pipe laying for a civil contractor. And things just kind of happened. I don't think the path was drawn.
Yeah. What would you say at this point has been your biggest career risk?
Ooh, um, the biggest one I remember, I just had my daughter. I was a superintendent for a sheet metal company. I was doing very well, and I basically cut my wage in half to get back into sales.
Mm,
Um, Turned out being one of the best things that ever happened to me.
yeah. And aside from that, anything that stands out as the biggest surprise for you in your career?
Um, every day I'm surprised. It's a constant learning experience.
Yeah.
It, People, I guess it's the connections that you make when you're young. It's a very small world, and you don't realize how some of those connections will help you later on in your life.
Yeah, and you've been enjoying such incredible success at a young age, which is great to see. But at this point in your career, what's the hardest lesson you've experienced?
Ooh, um, I think just planning for succession, not just in the business, but in life and everything. Life seems to go by very quick. Um, it's making sure that you can leave an imprint and make sure the people that follow you are better prepared to handle the same situation that you did.
Yeah, and is there anyone that stands out as someone who gave you your biggest opportunity?
Um, Absolutely. When I made that leap into sales, other than working retail, I never had any kind of outside sales experience or experience selling construction products. I'd installed them for years, but I went from the labor side of the business, and somebody believed in me. When I got hired with them initially, it was for a manufacturer. I was supposed to get hired for a role in Alberta. And after a couple weeks, he actually gave me BC and Alberta and then Western Canada. And then he had
Mm,
another company, and made me the rep for both companies, and later gave me an ownership opportunity.
wow. And now you're leading people at EMCO Waterworks in Langley. And for people who don't know, tell us what EMCO Waterworks actually does. Like most people turn on the tap, flush the toilet, drive over infrastructure every day without realizing the enormous industry behind it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a glamorous uh, group of items that we sell, um, but it's very important. It's we take care of all the water and sewer needs underneath the roads. The only thing that the general public would see really is fire hydrants, but um, all the municipal infrastructure, and we distribute the products to both private contractors, municipalities, and make sure your taps turn on and your toilets flush.
Yeah. And what excites you about the industry?
It's something new every day, and with any construction, I think new problems that you've never seen continue to show up, and it's a constant learning experience. It's very fast paced. You definitely never feel bored in this, and the best part is by far the people. It's a
Yeah.
great community of people, very supportive of each other, and you meet some fantastic humans.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, why have you stayed and what makes EMCO different?
They've given me constant growth and support. Um, I think what really makes EMCO stand out is its linear model. There's very few layers of management. It's a privately run company. Um, they let me run my my center basically as my own business, and they have full support for that. There's great training opportunities, and just the culture. It's a fun, great place to work.
Yeah, and culture, as you mentioned earlier, comes down to the people. And I've had the privilege of meeting some of your team. In your own opinion, what makes your team special?
Oh man, I think they're very driven. There's a ton of experience and different kinds of experience in there. Everybody has an open voice and a floor to say it. I think we all push each other, and everybody's vested and has ownership in the company.
Hmm. Yeah, and speaking about leadership in particular, when did you first realize I'm not just responsible for myself anymore? Was there one moment, or was that gradual?
That's a good question. I think being a junior manager in different careers, whether it be a superintendent or with Sport Mart, it didn't really weigh the same until I had my daughter, and you start realizing what a job does to a person's life and what that means. And now working at EMCO, we have lots of young teammates that are starting to have their families, and you go to sign their paycheck at the end of the year and you realize the impact that's going to have on their life and their families. I think definitely having a family of my own is made that way a little heavier.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So, what was your biggest adjustment moving from an employee to leader?
Definitely trusting others to take on my old role. Working as an outside salesperson, you spend years building these relationships and trusting somebody to take those over and make sure they're taken care of the same way you would. Um, you really got to, you know, put the right people in place and let them do it their way.
Yeah, and nobody really teaches us that. Typically, one day you're one of the crew, the next day you're leading the crew. And it's a completely different job. And those are certainly things you have to be mindful of. So, how would your team describe your leadership?
Empowering. Um, when I say empowering, I like to allow people to take risks, um, make decisions and mistakes, learn from them. I want to have an open communication with everybody and and remain consistent.
Yeah. So maybe this ties into this next question nicely. So, what kind of culture are you trying to create there?
Very collaborative and trusting culture. I want everybody to work as a team and trust the guy beside them that they got their back no matter what.
Yeah. So, as far as we a lot of rewards programs we see with companies, and typically that is to influence behaviors. What types of behaviors do you typically reward?
I would say free thinking and initiative. I like to see people look for new ideas to grow the business. Uh, you know, I think if had the best ideas in the business, I wouldn't need anybody else. It's I want to
Yeah.
surround myself with people that think differently than me and make sure that we all have a voice in it. And it's just there's a lot of different lenses out there.
Yeah, and with that encouragement of free thinking leads to innovation, and with innovation typically leads to a lot of mistakes. So, how do you handle mistakes?
Never dwell on them. Um, Learn your lessons. Listen to what went wrong. Listen to what went right, and move on. It's extremely important to not waste your time thinking about a decision. Just you need to make one, stick with it, and whether it's right or wrong, you'll know when it's time to move on. Just don't dwell.
Yeah, that's great. So, tell me, if one of your employees is struggling, obviously struggling, what's your first instinct? Is it to coach, challenge, listen?
Yeah, I think first I look at myself and what have I not taught them or what tools have I not given them. I think you need to look at the whole thing, really listen to what's going on, why it's not working for them. And then from there, you can figure out how to coach or challenge them But definitely get the facts and listen and take a deep dive at what you might be missing yourself first.
Yeah. And as we both know, leadership isn't all fun. So tell me about a difficult decision you had to make without getting into confidential details. How do you approach those moments?
Yeah, I think anytime you need to exit a relationship in business, whether it be a customer, a employee, a vendor, you name it. You got to take a deep dive into what your core values are, and if you're not aligned, no matter how long you've been working together or anything, you need to make sure that you're aligned together. Um, yeah, I think that you just got to look at the facts and make it very unbiased.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I know that you and I both believe is that leadership can be developed. Do you think that leaders are born or built?
I think there's a lot of natural born leaders. And I think not everybody sees that in themselves or um, in others. I think you can bring a leader out of anybody. There's many different successful and great ways to lead, and everybody offers something a little bit different. So it's challenging yourself to really figure out where your weaknesses are and improve on those.
Yeah. And how important is ongoing learning? Books, podcasts, courses, mentors, experience?
I think extremely. It's once you think you get to the top, it's easy to replicate from the outside. You got to be constantly evolving and changing and growing. It's your team needs growth, you need growth, your business needs
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah. So looking back now, if teenage Mike walked into this room, what advice would today's Mike give to him?
You don't know everything.
Yeah, fair,
And
fair.
be patient, and sometimes the doors that you open don't make sense at the time, but they later do. And just always be willing to learn.
Yeah, that's great. And if you could thank one person who had the biggest impact on your career, who would that be?
Without question, my dad.
Yeah,
He taught me patience, understanding, and a very hard work ethic.
that's great. All right, let's have a little fun with our rapid fire segment. So I'll ask you some questions and you give us your quick replies with no filters. Ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early bird, early bird or night owl?
Well, that's a really tough one. I'm more of a middayer, but early bird, if anything. I like to go to bed early.
Yeah. What's the biggest leadership book recommendation?
Ooh, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni.
Great. And what's your favorite podcast?
Diary of a CEO.
Yeah, I like that one too. What's your favorite vacation spot?
Maui.
That's great. Best advice you've ever received?
Oh man. You're given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Always be generous listening.
And what about the worst advice?
Um, you know, to probably just do it yourself to save time. I think
Mm,
that's one of the worst leadership mistakes you can make.
yeah. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Laziness and laziness and lies.
Mm. And one word your team would use to describe you?
Supportive.
That's great. All right. So this is the final question, and it's the question that I ask every guest. Mike, what are you working on today that you're most passionate about?
Oh, for sure, growth. And that's not just a professional level. I look at growth as being a dad and a husband. I want my business to grow. Currently, I'm involved in Crestcom and learning leadership growth. I want to constantly be evolving and making myself a better person. not just for me, but for those around me, especially.
Yeah, that's great. So, Mike, I want to thank you. It's funny, when we were stocking shelves at Sport Mart, we had absolutely no idea we'd be sitting here decades later having a conversation about leadership. Life has a funny way of working out. And I think today's conversation is proof that leadership isn't about where you start, it's about how you're willing to grow. So, thanks for joining me, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like, leave a comment, and tell us about someone from your first job who helped shape the leader that you've become. Until next time, remember, every leader has a story. Make yours worth telling. See you next Wednesday.